All right, folks, so I figured I would do a longer version of my general experience with PSA and kind of get my point across when it comes to them as a company and how my experiences have been with their products and in general what I think about them because after they recently banned me from one of their Facebook pages, I figured it was time, to kind of, I guess, voice my opinions about them because if they're going to play that game, well, what else do I have to lose? So I got a few things I'm going to cover, and it's going to be a little bit of a longer one. And don't mistake this as a rant, because I definitely believe that PSA does have their place, and that they certainly have a niche in the firearms market, and I like what they do for the most part. They have an important role to fill in the firearms market, and I'm glad that they're there. But it just needs to be more apparent about what they are, and for people to not be confused or to overstate the I guess the quality for what they're paying for. Um, they should absolutely be viewed as a value company, but not always necessarily in the sense that you get what you pay for. There are some instances where, yes, the products are very reasonably priced, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're paying for is necessarily worth the money, in my opinion, in my experiences. So there are plenty of examples of other companies I've seen where the products that I buy from them punch either right at their weight that I expect them to, or way above what their price point would suggest. That Savage rifle, for instance, that I reviewed is punching way above what I ever thought it would be capable of doing. Excellent, excellent value for the money. PSA does not do that. In my experiences, it does not do that at all. They are either exactly where they should be, or they are much, much below that. So let's just go over a few examples that I have and have had and experienced. And the first one I want to talk about is this shorty pistol upper. So the history behind this is my dad was just getting into pistol ARs, and he wanted to see if 5.56 was a viable platform to do in short barrels like this with a suppressor. Well, it turns out that not really, no, it wasn't. So he went instead with a 300 pistol, also from PSA, but I'll cover that one later. In particular, though, this particular upper here is pretty much exactly what you'd expect it to be. There's absolutely nothing about this that screams super duper awesome, amazing quality, except for maybe the handguard, because I believe the handguards for these are made by Midwest Industries, and if that's the case, then Midwest Industries has always made excellent products for me. I love all the stuff they make. Awesome. Totally worth the money to me. But concerning the construction and performance of this upper, I have been kind of disappointed in it, because the bolt carrier that came with this, because this was ordered as a complete upper, that's with the charging handle and bolt carrier. Right now it's in a different gun. It always had issues regardless of whatever kind of ammo, whatever magazine, whatever we did to it, it just did not perform well. The accuracy is just absolutely all over the place. I mean, with a red dot sight on this thing, even at 50 yards, you're getting like 4 to 6 inch groups, which is just unacceptable, to be honest. Not that you should really be engaging with that kind of upper in 5.56 at anything greater than 50 or 100 yards, but the point remains the accuracy was very disappointing. So, and the performance as far as cycling, locking back on empty, the general shooting of it was not very pleasurable. It did not lock back open on empty ever, and it would occasionally have issues cycling depending on the ammo. It really didn't like steel case all that much, but I mean, a lot of ARs had difficulties with that, including more expensive ones. But in general, using a standard PSA pistol lower with this, I just didn't have any success with it. It was a range toy, to be honest. It was there for making a lot of flash, making a lot of noise, and blasting at very large targets, not particularly accurately. So I have very, very little use for something like this. I don't think it was that high quality to begin with. It's not particularly accurate. And I have no idea what these sell for now, but a complete upper like this has absolutely no purpose to me. And not really, I don't think a practical purpose for much for many other people either. So however much that this was, to be honest, you'd have to sell, to me, you'd have to sell that for probably like 150, 200 bucks for me to even consider it. But I know PSA probably sells it for a lot more than that. I don't see a point in it. It's not very high quality to me. It just didn't do anything exceptional. It didn't even work properly. So that is a negative against PSA. Now, I do have another rifle here. So this is my just really basic M4 carbine style, both PSA upper and lower. And I got both of these on sale because PSA does sales right around the holidays. So I think I got this lower here for 100 bucks, and I think I got the upper for like 180 or something like that. And I figured, well, the upper they were selling in particular did not include a bolt carrier or charging handle. So I figured I would take the bolt carrier and charging handle off of this pistol upper that I no longer used and just slap it in here, and it should work at least somewhat reliably, right? It turns out, no, it did not. So the performance, again, was not all that great. This upper here is, from what I've seen, only capable of about 2.5 to 3 MOA, and that's with really nice ammo, like match ammo, that gets one MOA and all my other ARs. So the fact that this one is not capable of doing that is, I mean, can you really complain so much for 180 bucks or however much I paid for this upper? Kind of, you know, I'm not thrilled with it. I mean, it's shot and it put holes in you know, in the paper, but not especially impressed with it. And when running the BCG from the pistol upper there, this rifle suffered the same issues. It would short stroke, it would not lock back on empty, it would have issues cycling. It just did not like that bolt carrier whatsoever. And I've done absolutely no modifications to this except replace the handguard. That shouldn't make a difference. But when I put a higher quality BCG, like say an Aero Precision or Toolcraft, I have absolutely no issues with that M4 rifle. So to me, that says that there's a problem with the Palmetto State branded BCG. So whatever the issues with that, it's probably on Palmetto. I would wager, I would bet. And you know, given what I paid for this rifle, I really can't complain too much. But at the same time, it just wasn't very impressive, and that was one of those cases where it definitely punches at its weight. It does not go above, and it did cycle and work as it should have with a proper bolt carrier, but with the PSA one, no, did not. So with the correct bolt carrier, it worked just fine. Accuracy was a little lacking, although, you know, when you're paying 180 bucks for a 16-inch upper like that, you can't really expect too much money to go into the barrel. So I'm not going to knock them too much for that, but a little disappointing. But considering I got that M4 purely for looks, because I just wanted something to slap a quad rail onto, it fills that purpose. So oh well. But I will say though, the stock that it comes with, I mean, it's your standard, what you would assume is standard kind of 6-position M4 stock. But man, this thing is wobbly as heck. It is super, super, super loose. A lot looser than my Armalite rifle, which also came with an M4 stock. That one was way tighter than this one. So then again, that Armalite rifle also cost like 3 or 4 times what this one did. So I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but you know, the point still stands. So not overly impressed with that. Let's go to a pistol lower. So I bought a standard PSA pistol lower originally for this upper, and it came with the fixed SB tactical brace, the one that uses a different buffer tube that you can't adjust. It's kind of fixed. I went with that because it was super cheap, and the lowers on ARs don't matter as much as the uppers do when it comes to in terms of quality. So I mean, I've seen dudes out there with HK MR556 uppers with Anderson lowers, and they work just fine. So despite the quality disparity there, the fact that the rifle still works just fine is kind of a testament to the fact that lowers, I'm not going to say they don't matter, but they matter a lot less than the construction and quality of the upper. So the pistol lower has been working just fine for me. Any other kind of pistol upper that I've put on it has worked just fine. It's not an especially pleasurable shooting experience. I could probably upgrade it a little bit, but given what I paid for it, I think I paid $120 or $150 for the pistol lower, and it's your basic no frills. It doesn't have the nickel boron trigger. It's got the standard mil-spec trigger. It's got standard carbine buffer in there. Absolutely nothing fantastic special about it, and it works just fine. So I've actually been happy with my pistol lower. So I have since replaced the fixed brace with a SB-A3 brace, and that has been miles better than that. So for what I paid for it at the time and its performance, I've actually been satisfied with the pistol lower. So that's a point in their favor. So next, so like I mentioned earlier, my dad was looking at experiments in pistol uppers, and he eventually settled on a complete 300 Blackout pistol configuration for his kind of like bug out go-to gun. And I think he runs like an 8.5 PSA upper and pistol lower. And that thing has actually been quite good. No reliability issues, even with subs or supers, both with or without a can. It's been working great. It's a little on the heavy side, but I think that's mostly due to the barrel on that thing is just, it's freaking huge. It almost looks like a bull barrel when you look underneath the handguard. Yeah, he's running all PSA parts in there, nickel boron VCG. Absolutely no issues with it whatsoever. It's been great. Accuracy-wise, I haven't really taken the time to go out and test it because it's just really more of his gun than my gun. And I would expect it would work acceptably. I don't think it would blow anybody's mind, but I would expect at least a 2 MOA accuracy out of that upper if you really take your time and use really good ammo. So another point in their favor. Now, the final product that I had, the latest product that I had from PSA was a PSA AK-GF3. Now, I have not, and I'm not going to review that because I have already moved it because of how disappointing it was, to say the least. So I will start out by saying this: the finish on the rifle was excellent. It would look better than any other Wasser I've ever seen. PSA has a really good and attractive like finishing process. I don't exactly know what they use on everything, but it is this nice rich black. It's very smooth, and that definitely carries over to their AKs. So the AK was finished very well. Now, when I got it, I had the Magpul Mo furniture version, and when I got it from them, the stock was already loose in the back, but I did not know if that was how it was supposed to be because Palmetto uses a proprietary kind of puzzle piece system in the back of their stock. So it was loose, and I figured, well, okay, maybe that's just how it's supposed to be, or maybe I could tighten it somehow or something like that. But that stock is an absolute nightmare, so I did not like it very much. The safety lever, the safety selector on the PSA AK was exceptionally loose. It you could breathe on it wrong and that thing would move. And that was a little disconcerting because all the other previous AKs, literally every single other AK that I have used, that safety lever is kind of a little difficult to move. It's not super easy. So I didn't like that very much. The trigger on it was kind of odd because there was no discernible wall in it whatsoever. You didn't know when it was going to break. I didn't like that very much. Trigger was light, but not having a definable wall like that or knowing when it's going to break, not really a fan of it. All other AKs that I've shot have had better triggers than that. Not really a fan. What else? So as most AK people know, pretty much every AK you get is going to have a canted front sight. So it's going to be canted a little bit. Usually to the right. If you're looking straight down the rear sight towards the front sight, it's going to be canted over to the right. So that was definitely the case with this rifle that I got, but it was canted over so much that when I had to go to adjust the front sight to even get it even remotely centered and zeroed on target, it was twisted almost all the way over to the left. Like there was almost no room left for adjustment, and that seems a little egregious to me. I've not had any other AK that required that much adjustment over to the left. Also, PSA AKs do not ship with cleaning rods, which I find odd, to say the least, considering they have the receptacle in place for it. PSA claims it's too expensive to source those, contract them, make them. Whatever the reason is, it's very odd, and I kind of don't like it. So I had to procure my own, stuff that thing in there, it fit just fine. The muzzle brake on it was your usual slant brake, which doesn't do anything at all, so I put my own AK-74 style brake on there. Worked just great. Made a noticeable difference in recoil. So I will say, out of all the other AKs I fired, for some odd reason that I don't know why this happens, but when I shot that one, the recoil was very stout, extremely stout. It felt almost as if the rifle was overgassed, but more so than any other AK I've fired before. And I fired Century AKs, I fired Romanians, I fired Arsenals, all across the board. For some reason, this PSA AK was the only one that had such violent action and recoil that when I was firing it, it was actually kind of beating up my jaw, and it was immensely uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable to fire. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's a stock being loose. Maybe it's wobble like this is making it, kick into my face. So I went to my smith and I said, hey, can you tighten the stock up for me? And he's looking at it like, this stock has you need 3 or 4 hands and all these fingers to really tighten that thing down, because it's such a weird system that they use, especially for the Magpul stock. So kind of a bit of a nightmare with that. So I got it tightened up, took it back out to the range, still having the same issues. So I really do not understand what about this rifle was so bad that it made the recoil impulse just kick into my face and make it very unpleasant to shoot. And then we get to the worst part of this gun was the accuracy. So a lot of folks out there are going to tell me, okay, well, AKs are not supposed to be accurate, right? Cool. And then we get into debates of what accurate actually means, what people's standards of accuracy are, blah, blah, blah. My standard is, if you're going to have basically any rifle that I have, it needs to be at least a 4 MOA rifle, okay? Because I have a lot of old milsurp rifles that are from before 1900, and they can still do 4 MOA with crap milsurp ammo, right? So that is my standard of my rifles. It's got to be at least 4 MOA. I would prefer sub 2 MOA, but things happen. Like sometimes you get a cheap barrel, you get a cheap upper, and it doesn't do that. But this rifle, for some reason, this PSA AK, for some reason that I still cannot figure out to this day, was not capable of anything better than 6 MOA at any distance. So, maybe at 25 yards it could get a little bit better than that, but you're not going to be shooting this rifle at 25 yards. At 50 yards, at 100 yards, I could not get better than 6 MOA, and that's with irons and a magnified optic. 3 optics, in fact. So I got a Midwest Industries side mount rail, and I made sure everything was secured inside. I did all the troubleshooting that I should have, because this is not my first rodeo. I've had AKs before. I've handled AKs before. I know how to shoot and mount optics. So I made sure I did my part to ensure that everything was correct and as it should be. And no matter what I did, and I used a vast range of ammo. I used Wolf Tula, really nice Barnaul. I used American Eagle brass case, for God's sakes. I used SMB brass case. Did not matter. I could not get better than 6 MOA with this rifle, and that is frankly disappointing, to say the least. So the fact that my Romanian SKS made in the 60s or 50s or whatever shoots better than a modern production AK does, that's pretty sad. So extremely disappointed with that rifle. So and I'll get into my next point a little bit later, but I'm frankly not interested in hearing the argument that AKs are that's just an AK, it's just going to be inaccurate. I don't believe it. I don't, because all the other AKs that I've shot have achieved at least 4 MOA. Some even get 2 MOA. In fact, the most accurate AK I have shot has been a Century C39V2 on 2 examples, not just 1, but 2. So the fact that has been repeatable through what people would consider a crap AK versus a PSA brand AK, which receives so much praise for being awesome, and it gets 6 MOA accuracy, people's praise, it does not match what I am experiencing. So I would consider myself a pretty experienced rifle shooter, especially with optics and irons as well. So the fact that I did all the things that I think I should be doing to squeeze accuracy out of this gun and it cannot do it, what else am I supposed to do? So frankly, I felt like that was money wasted. I told myself from the get-go, when I go and buy this gun, it's going to be for science. I'm going to see if all the claims are true or not. And to be honest, some of the claims are true and some are not. So given my experience with, obviously sample size of 1, but given the rest of the stuff that I've used from PSA, I can't say I'm too surprised, but I'm still a little disappointed as well. So I will say reliability function of the rifle was 100%. Never had any issues whatsoever. No jams, no failures to feed, nothing. Out of all the magazines that I used P-mags, I used steel mags of all different kinds of countries and origins. I used shitty little 10-rounder Tapcos. I've used the 20-rounder P-mag, all kinds. So reliability function, the overall look of it, the aesthetics, perfect. No problem whatsoever. Accuracy and shooting experience, poor, absolutely unacceptable. Did not like it at all. And that does not inspire a lot of confidence in me when they come out with the PSA AK or whatever it's called, their new and improved enhanced edition with a cold hammer forged barrel. Oh yeah. Frankly, I don't care. Given the poor showing with this PSA AK-GF3, not interested anymore. If I'm going to spend money, this is basically told me if I'm going to spend money on an AK, I should have just listened to people before and just bought a Wasser 10 or bought an Arsenal or whatever other block country it comes from. Just buy from them. Save yourself the trouble. Don't piss around with American AKs anymore and just get the good stuff and just pay the extra, wait the extra time, and you'll get a rifle that's worth your money and your time. That's definitely been my experience so far. So yeah, that is the latest product I've used from them. Now, this gets into my last point. Is there seems to be a kind of cult following, kind of cult reputation about PSA. So I have a theory about why this happens, but we're going to go over it anyway. So it seems like despite all of the failings of PSA and honestly a bit of their sales tactics, their marketing, their thing, all of how they operate, all of that taken together, if it was any other company, they would have been absolutely dragged by the customer base. If DPMS or Remington or whatever came out with some kind of upper that didn't cycle properly, didn't lock back open on empty, you couldn't use the BCG in another gun, stuff like that. People would be dragging them all throughout the mud all day long. They'd be saying shouting from the rooftops how awful and horrible this company is. But for some reason, PSA gets a pass. And PSA has definitely not been has not been a saint in the past. Their previous AKs before the Generation 3s were generally accepted as pretty garbage. Quality control, in my experience for them, has always varied. I've seen some PSA rifles that have been excellent. I've seen some PSA rifles that are absolute garbage. Individual products, I've seen PSA products that work great. Some that look just okay, and some that have, you could not pay me to give it to me. So putting all this together, there's just this kind of cult around PSA that says that that they can do no wrong. They fulfill this very important niche. Well, they don't cost that much, so why are you complaining? How much can you complain when you only pay this kind of money? Blah 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 blah. Right? They're an all-American company. How great is that? Right? So the reason why I think this kind of cult of personality exists is because, one, they are very accessible. PSA generally does a pretty good job about keeping stuff in stock. Two, they're very cheap, and cheap in the sense of being affordable and having reasonable-ish prices. And that appeals to a lot of people because if you think about it, there is a reason why Walmart is as big and prolific as it is. It's not because they have quality products, it's because they're cheap and available. So I feel like this is kind of the same concept applied to PSA. And if people realize that, people understand that, and go and approach them with that mentality, saying, hey, I understand this is not going to be necessarily a super quality product. It may work sometimes, it may not. You may get a good one, you may not. If they approach it that way, I don't have a problem with PSA, that's fine. But if they don't readily acknowledge that, or they don't come out and say those things, or you have, in the worst cases, their fan base saying things literally as just as good, no, I don't agree with that at all. So when someone says their cheapo PSA M4 like I have here is as good as my Armalite or my Aero Precision, nope, sorry dude, it's not. I don't care if you have the special cold hammer forged barrel in there or not. I would bet you money the higher quality stuff is going to shoot better pretty much every single time. And I have no issue saying that, because that has been my experience with pretty much everything I've used. So I'm going to go with my experience over yours every single day, because to be honest, most people out there don't actually shoot their guns that much. So like I said, so they're being cheap, readily available, and accessible appeals to a lot of people, and that's fine. It's just understand what you have, don't overinflate what you have, and approach it reasonably. Don't and don't shy away from it either. So when I called out, well, I wouldn't even call it calling out. When I just talked to the guy on PSA on Facebook and said, hey, this is how I feel things are, and he just outright blocks me. Why would you deny what I perceive to be the truth, how things are? If I'm wrong, please correct me. I have no issue learning about it. I have no issue being told that I'm wrong in that kind of aspect, because I don't run a gun company, right? I'm the end user, I'm the end consumer. I don't know everything there is to know about running a gun company, manufacturing guns. I don't. But being the end user, being the end customer, there are a few things that I can comment on, and that is definitely one of them. If I have a huge range of products that were not provided to me by PSA, and I find these issues, I can pretty much guarantee you I'm not the only one having these issues across the country. So yeah, that pretty much covers like my whole take on PSA. I don't hate them. I just kind of wish they would be a little bit more obvious about their level of quality, because I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to say, hey, we may be like the Walmart of guns in America. That's totally fine. People love Walmart. People shop at Walmart all the time. That's great. That's fine. That's wonderful. Just don't come out and say, or try to hide things like you're some high tier manufacturer, because you're not, and everyone knows it. So that's not saying that every manufacturer needs to be high tier. They don't, because like I said, PSA fills a very important role, a very niche role, for certain people looking for certain things. If you only have so much money to spend on a rifle, you only have so much money to spend. I get it. I've been there. Not everything I own is super expensive, but then again, not everything I own is super cheap either. So for some folks, it works just fine for the purposes that they need to fulfill. Not everything needs to be a sub-1-way rifle. Not everything needs to be a target rifle. Not everything needs to be, super duper accurate, made of the best materials all the time, forever. But I do believe it does need to work. And when products don't work the way they're intended, I don't care how expensive they are. I don't care how cheap they are either. The fact that they don't work means they don't work. So all that money to me is basically thrown out the window if it doesn't work. So anyway, I feel like I've said enough about PSA and kind of my approach and mentality to that. And I really do feel like sometimes the gun community is its own worst enemy. So this is not meant to be a huge rant against PSA, not meant to be a negative thing. It's just, I wish people would realize this is just how things are. So the sooner people accept that, or at least maybe come at me with a different perspective and say, hey, maybe you should consider this, consider that. Cool, I'm cool with taking input. But, I'm going to go back to the other example and just say, when you have folks come out here and say that your PSA is just as good as something else that is obviously higher tier, higher quality, no, it's not. And you should stop trying to delude yourself into thinking that it is. I forget the the name of it, but it's a phenomenon basically where a purchaser tries to justify his purchase to others. So there's no need for that. You just accept it for what it is. I mean, if it doesn't shoot as good, if it's lower quality, just accept it for that. I mean, it's fine. Does the rifle work? Does it accomplish what you need it to accomplish in the way that you need to accomplish it? You know, if it does, it's good to go as far as I'm concerned. So, but my personal standards are a little bit different when it comes to what I expect out of the products that I buy. So anyway, I've ranted on long enough about that, but yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of feedback either way, good or bad. So, but that's my take on it. So my experiences, my things that I think about, you know, what I have. So your experience may vary, obviously, but yeah, I'm sure there's many other people out there who have had the same experiences like I have. So anyway, we'll see you next time.